Tuesday shaping up?
And today is going to be a gloomy looking like of day across South Florida. Once again, we have a lot of clouds, some lower clouds out there, and we'll see fewer showers, but there will be a chance pretty much the entire day. The low clouds that are out there could produce these drizzle like showers, but overall the pattern looking like we're going to see less activity today. It's just going to be very gloomy. Heading into tomorrow, that's when it's trending even wetter. Here's a look at the radar, and you can see that most areas in comparison to yesterday at this time are dry, but along the coastline, especially in Miami-Dade, now we're starting to see some shower activity developing. In Broward County, mostly dry right now. We had some showers around Dania Beach and Hollywood. Those have fizzled, but around Miami Beach, heading northward into Fisher Island, Key Biscayne, seeing some showers there. Around the upper Florida Keys, it's dried up at this hour. Here's a look at temperatures. Not as cool to start off. So today I do believe will actually warm up a tad more. 69 in Pompano, Fort Lauderdale at 69, 64 in Hollywood, and then we zoom on into Miami, 60 degrees here, 60 in Kendall to 61 in Homestead. And around the Florida Keys, well, temperature readings here are in the mid 60s. And I'll be back with a whole lot more in your local forecast coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We're waking up to a lot of clouds, and those clouds could produce some isolated drizzles, but there's a chance for shower activity this morning. Keep that in mind. We have some areas around South Florida that are cooler than others. Right now in Miami at 60, West Kendall 60, Key West 66, 69 in Pompano and Fort Lauderdale, with the wind out of the northwest anywhere between 8 to 9 miles per hour, humidity at 100%. So we know there's moisture out there, and visibility around downtown Miami has dropped a bit because of the low clouds, and it's down to less than 3 miles. And here's a look at the local storm tracking radar to show you that it's mostly dry out there, but there's green out on your screen. So we're going to zoom on into the areas where we do have some activity, and we had some fading in southern Broward County. So right now mostly dry in Miami-Dade County. A different story. We have developing rain here around Miami Beach, Key Biscayne. The stretch is now into Biscayne Bay, and it's going to impact Coral Gables and Pinecrest. Near the airport, there's one shower producing light rain. Around the Florida Keys, it is mostly dry at this time. So let's take a look at what we can expect. We're going to have pretty much a front around, so that's why we're going to keep the clouds in place. But I do believe today we'll see less activity than yesterday. Tomorrow, there's the possibility of seeing more rain in the forecast with gustier winds across the region from the north. And then Wednesday rolls around. It'll stay unsettled across South Florida. We'll have some cool showers as a front moves in between Wednesday night and Thursday morning, and that will set the stage for chillier weather. So showers at times for sure. 30% rain chance today. It's trending wetter tomorrow up to a 60%, and then we're going to drop the chance for rain as we head into the all-important weekend. Small craft advisory in effect. High risk of rip currents at area beaches. East-northeast winds 5 to 15 knots. Biscayne Bay at a light chop. Florida Keys going between a light to a moderate chop with a southeast wind later today, 5 to 15 knots. And the next tide cycle will be low tide this morning at 7:11 in Fort Lauderdale. So for today, we're going to have gloomy skies, fewer showers. Temperatures will actually climb this time around into the 70s. And as we move on into tonight, it does look like temperature readings will drop a bit more, so it'll be cool, cloudy, and damp. And yes, we're going to see more rain heading into our Wednesday. Front moves in Thursday. Colder by Friday with another blast of cold air settling in throughout the day to help temperatures drop down into the 40s for Saturday morning. And that's your 7-on-7 forecast. Good morning, South Florida. Hopefully everyone's off to a great start. Have the rain gear with you. Pack the patience as well, because some of the roadways are slick. We've seen some shower activity. And right now it is 69 in Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach, 60 in West Kendall, 60 in Miami, 66 in Key West. With the wind out of the northwest, 3 to 8 miles per hour, humidity high at 100%, letting us know that there's moisture in the air, but visibility has dropped around downtown Miami, and that's because there's some lower clouds around. Now here's a look at the radar. It's not as active as it was yesterday at this time, but there's still the possibility of seeing some shower activity, just less in coverage. Now, as far as your commute is concerned, if it takes you through coastal Miami-Dade between Miami Beach, Fisher Island, Key Biscayne, light to moderate rain here, and some of it will be working its way possibly northward into downtown Miami. We've had some showers fizzle near Coral Gables and US 1, but everywhere else should be mostly dry right now. We have some sprinkles around Tavernier along the Overseas Highway. The rest of the Keys are dry. So the forecast calls for a front to linger nearby and an area of low pressure forming. So today, most of the rain will happen north of Alligator Alley. That's not to say that we won't see activity here. But then we move on into to Wednesday, and it does look like we're going to see more rain in the forecast with gustier breeze out of the north. And then Thursday rolls around, and we will have unsettled weather continuing with some cool showers until this system completely clears. Now, we will have showers at times today, 30%. It gets bumped up to a 60% heading into Wednesday, chance on Thursday, and then it dramatically drops heading into the upcoming weekend. Your boating forecast has a small craft advisory in effect. High risk of rip currents at area beaches with the winds shifting out of the east-northeast 5 to 15 knots, 4 to 6 foot seas, higher in the Gulf Stream. Tonight, a small craft advisory may be required due to the wind and seas increasing. And then your next tide cycle will be low tide in the 7 o'clock hour for Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Highs today, warmer than yesterday in the 70s. We'll have gloomy skies. Tonight, cloudy, damp with some showers. Temperatures cooler in the 50s, upper 50s, 60s for the Florida Keys. And your extended outlook calls for a stronger front to move in Thursday. That sets the stage for low 50s to start off on Friday, then 40s come Saturday. And that's your 7 on 7. Good morning, Ethan. Olivia, South Florida. Thank you for starting your day with us. We'll have fewer showers around, but it will be a gloomy looking day. Tomorrow trending much wetter, but it will remain cloudy pretty much the entire week, but just going with cooler air gradually building into the region, and then it turns colder by the end of the week. So here's a look at the radar. It's mostly dry, but we do have some lower clouds. And right now, if your commute takes you through coastal Dade, there's some shower activity between Miami Beach, Fisher Island, and Key Biscayne, light to moderate rain there. And then as we move on into the Florida Keys, few showers between North Key Largo and Tavernier, very light. And now we just got word that there's a dense marine fog advisory for the Bayside that will last through 11 o'clock this morning. Right now it is 63 in Fort Lauderdale. Cool start in Miami to 60, but 64 in Marathon, 65 in Key West, with your day planner calling for the clouds to hold, but this time around temperatures climbing into the low and mid 70s. Your complete outlook is coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We're waking up to mostly cloudy skies. We've seen some showers around, but today we'll see fewer showers in comparison to yesterday. Now, around the Florida Keys, especially into the Bayside, there's the concern for poor visibility. Some marine fog has formed, and there's an advisory through 11 o'clock this morning. Now, if your commute takes you around South Florida, the roadways are wet. We urge you to be cautious while driving this morning, but keep in mind that there's still a chance of seeing some shower activity. We actually have some located in coastal Miami-Dade between Miami Beach and Fisher Island into the 195, and that's pretty much all we're finding right now. But there's also a small craft advisory in effect for our offshore waters. We take a look at the big view. We have all sorts of cold weather alerts for the Panhandle, northern sections of the state. And this stretches all the way into Texas, where there's a developing snowstorm. And that snowstorm will be pushing through the Gulf Coast states and into northern Florida, where it could produce anywhere between 2 to 6 inches of snow. Then as we move on into tomorrow, parts of northern Florida, maybe all the way into Gainesville, could see some freezing rain. 63 degrees in Fort Lauderdale, 60 in Miami, 65 in Key West. But then we take a look at interior locations. It's much cooler here. 62 in Pines, 60 in Sunrise, in northern Miami-Dade, 68 in Sunny Isles. Then we move on into Opa-locka at 60 degrees, Doral at 59, southern Dade 61 in Homestead, and the Florida Keys here in the low to mid 60s, 65 in Isla Morada. Same for Big Pine Key. Our breeze today out of the east-northeast, anywhere between 5 to 10 miles per hour. We're going to have a front lingering. Low pressure develops along it. Most of the rain today will be confined into the lake region. But tomorrow we're going to have more wet weather, gustier breeze out of the north, and then our next system rolls through sometime on Thursday. So it'll still be unsettled with cool showers around. Your boating forecast has, again, a small craft advisory, high risk of rip currents at area beaches, with an advisory likely required as wind and seas increase tonight for the Florida Keys. For now, coastal waters light to a moderate chop. With the next tide cycle, that'll be low tide at 7:11 in Fort Lauderdale, 7:20 in Miami. So for today, gloomy skies, temperatures this time around in the lower 70s, and then by tonight, cooler, with temperatures in the 50s around mainland locations, 60s for the Florida Keys. But get ready, the clouds are going to hold, but it turns colder by the end of the week and into the upcoming weekend, with possibly widespread 40s. That's your 7 on 7 forecast.
Some rain out there, Viv.
Yes, we've seen some rain, and the thick clouds that are out there could produce some isolated drizzles. But the overall pattern today will be gloomy, with the majority of the wet weather located north of Alligator Alley. You can see that this time around there's more rain, but just to the north of us. So just be prepared that there's still that possibility in store for today. There's moisture in the air to support some showers, and we've seen that around coastal Miami-Dade this morning. So if your commute takes you through Miami Beach, there's actually a heavier downpour here as it slowly drifts toward the north. And then around the upper Florida Keys, we've seen some sprinkles, but now around Elliott Keys and Sands Key, seeing some dotted shower activity. But there's the concern for poor visibility, especially boaters bayside from the overseas highway into the Florida Keys. There's a dense marine fog advisory that will run through 11 o'clock this morning. Right now it's 60 in Miami, 63 in Fort Lauderdale, with your day planner calling for this time around for temperatures to climb into the 70s. Your complete outlook is coming up in about 15 minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We're waking up to mostly cloudy skies. We've seen some showers. The roadways are wet, so just make sure that you give yourselves extra time heading outside the door this morning, but we'll see less rain in comparison to yesterday. It's just going to be a gloomy looking day overall. And on the radar, most areas this morning are dry, but around coastal Miami-Dade, we have this gusty downpour that's developed in Miami Beach, and it's slowly moving toward the north and east, but it is producing heavy rain. And around the Florida Keys, there's the concern for poor visibility, so there's a dense marine fog advisory for the Bayside until 11 o'clock this morning. But I wanted to show you the winter weather advisories that are in place for northern sections of the state that stretch all the way into Texas, where there's a developing snowstorm, and we could see the freezing rain changing over to snow, where the air is much colder, and it stretches into a good portion of Louisiana, going into Mississippi and Alabama later today. That is all going to migrate into sections of the Sunshine State, believe it or not. So our models are showing that the snow will wintry mix that will be experienced around northern Florida, possibly getting close to Gainesville, but definitely heavier periods of rain expected around this area. The most significant snow totals will likely be around a portion of the Panhandle. That includes Panama City, where there could be anywhere between 2 to almost 6 inches of snow. 63 degrees in Fort Lauderdale, 60 in Miami, 65 for you in Key West, with the wind out of the east northeast today. And there's a front that is lingering, and that is why we have moisture in the air for some rain. Tomorrow it does look like it will get much wetter and gustier, and then low pressure and front crosses through sometime Thursday, so we'll still be on the unsettled side. Your boating forecast calls for a small craft advisory, 4 to 6 foot seas higher in the Gulf Stream. There's a small craft advisory that may be required tonight as wind and seas increase for the Florida Keys. And in the 7 o'clock hour, we will have low tide happening in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Highs today in the 70s this time around. Gloomy skies tonight, cloudy, damp with some showers, trending cooler in the 50s and 60s with your extended outlook calling for colder air to filter in on Friday. And that's your 7 on 7 forecast.
That southeastern radar and the snow moving through the Gulf Coast.
It really is wild, and it does look like some significant snow is going to fall around parts of the Panhandle starting tonight into tomorrow. So some of the models even going between 2 to 6 inches of snow, and that includes Panama City and parts of I-10. Now, here in South Florida, we had an interesting picture with those 4 cameras put together because it shows that it's cloudy all around South Florida. We've seen some periods of showers, but there's also areas of patchy fog, and our tower cam got that perfectly, but not everyone's seeing fog this morning. We do have a lot of cloud cover around, and most of the rain is located northward, but we do have some shower activity that could impact your commute around coastal Miami-Dade. There's some heavier rain here by Normandy Shores and Miami Beach along A1A, and now some lighter rain starting to move into North Bay Village outside our Channel 7 studios. Along I-95, some very light showers around. We also have another shower impacting Key Biscayne, but most of the area remains dry. There's also a dense marine fog advisory in effect for the Bay side that will run through 11 o'clock this morning. Temperatures have cooled down too. It's 61 in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, 65 in Key West. Your full forecast coming up in a few minutes. In South Florida, hopefully everyone is off to a great start. It feels coolish out there right now. It's 61 in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, 60 in West Kendall to 65 in Key West, with the wind out of the north-northwest between 5 to 8 miles per hour. Humidity still high, visibility low in downtown Miami because there's been a little bit of fog that has developed, but we also have some low clouds around too. Now, as far as the radar is concerned, it's much drier to start off in comparison to yesterday, but where we do have some rain, that's around the coastline in Miami-Dade, and we have some heavier rain between Isle of Normandy moving into Bay Harbor Islands, gusty winds accompanying the batch that at least the bulk of it's located off the coast, but around Little River and I-95, North Miami seeing some wet weather right now that's slowly lifting northward. In Biscayne Bay, there's some light showers, and now some clipping pine crests at this time. And around the Florida Keys, there's the concern for visibility. So around the Bay side, there's a dense marine fog advisory through 11 o'clock. But I wanted to show you the big view. Developing snow system that is impacting Texas right now. There's snow on the ground for sure, and this is stretching into Mississippi and Alabama, and eventually later today into the Panhandle of Florida. Our models are showing that there will be snow pushing through the region, freezing rain too in the mix, but heavier rain heading south into Gainesville and potentially Orlando. It all clears in the evening, but models are showing that for a portion of the Panhandle, about 2 to 6 inches of snow possible. Our forecast calls for a front to linger, and that is why it'll be gloomy over the next few days until another system pushes through. I do believe tomorrow it'll be wetter and gustier, but the next system that we're going to be following closely pushes through Thursday. It'll still be unsettled with some cool showers, but we'll have dry time, especially to close out the week as conditions get much colder. As far as your boating forecast is concerned, not the best day to be out there. Offshore waters, that's where we have a small craft advisory in effect tonight. One could be required for the Florida Keys. And then the next tide cycle, that will be low tide at 7:11 in Fort Lauderdale. So highs today in the 70s, and by tonight, cooler in the 50s and 60s for the Florida Keys, with your extended outlook calling for 40s to return over the weekend. That's your 7 on 7 forecast. Please don't go anywhere. 7 News Today in Florida. We'll be right back.
Hi, Viv.
Hi there. And a good portion of the country under cold weather alerts, and that includes northern Florida, just not here in South Florida. So we're pretty lucky, despite the fact that it's going to be looking gloomy over the next few days. The majority of the wet weather cloud cover today will be north of Alligator Alley. You can see that here on your screen, but there's a chance still of seeing some shower activity today across South Florida. And we've been seeing that this morning around coastal Miami-Dade. So if your commute takes you through Bay Harbor Islands right now, you're getting a downpour, but at least the bulk of the rain is to the east of the area. We have some drizzles left over around North Miami and Little River along I-95. We also have some very light showers in the Gables and about to clip US 1. Now, as we head south into the Florida Keys, visibility is an issue. So on the bay side, that's where we have a dense marine fog advisory that will run through 11 o'clock. Right now it's 61 in Miami, 62 Fort Lauderdale, 65 for you in Key West. But we will see showers at times, trending wetter by tomorrow. And then another system moves in to dry things out by the end of the week. And that means that it's only going to get colder. Your full forecast coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. Hopefully everyone's off to a great start. It is gloomy looking outside, and unfortunately clouds are set to stick around pretty much the entire week. Now, in terms of rain, today we'll see a lot less of it than we did yesterday, but there's that possibility of seeing some shower activity, so keep that in mind. The bulk of the rain located off the coast, but Bay Harbor Islands now just seeing some light rain along A1A. We move south into Key Biscayne, very light showers. That's pretty much all we're noticing on the radar. But around the bay side into the Gulf of Mexico, there's a dense marine fog advisory that will run through 11 o'clock since there are visibility issues there. So boaters, just stay away from the waters for now. And as far as other advisories are concerned, take a look at the winter advisories that are in effect for northern Florida, mid-Atlantic states, and all the way into Texas at this time, where there's a snowstorm brewing here, and there's snow on the ground even in Houston at this hour, stretching into Mississippi and parts of Alabama. Starting tonight, parts of the Panhandle will be getting into the action. So here's a look at the southern snow between today and tomorrow. A good swath will impact the Panhandle, freezing rain as well into Jacksonville and southern Georgia. The wintry mix will definitely be experienced there. Heavier periods of rain south into Gainesville at this point. But models are showing that parts of Florida could get about 2 to 6 inches of snow. Closer to home in the 60s, low 60s along the East Coast, with the breeze out of the east northeast, and on the lighter side expected to increase later today. We have this front nearby, and that's why it's been rather unsettled. But then we're going to get another area of low pressure moving through, so it'll be cool, windy, wet Wednesday. And then the other system settles in sometime on Thursday. That's the one that's going to be bringing in some colder air for our Friday. And then we get a reinforcing shot for the weekend. Threat of rip currents high at area beaches. Small craft advisory in effect. Seas building 4 to 6 feet up to 8 feet in the Gulf Stream. Biscayne Bay to light chop. Florida Keys light to a moderate chop. An advisory may be required tonight as wind and seas increase. And now in the 7 o'clock hour, we do have low tide happening in Miami and Fort Lauderdale coming up at 8:10 in Key West. Highs today a little warmer than yesterday in the 70s. And then by tonight, 50s around mainland South Florida, 60s for the Florida Keys with your extended outlook calling for a chance of showers through Thursday. Colder conditions on Friday, and take a look at the low on Saturday, 46. Metro 7 on 7.
I was thrown off by the camera on video is what happened. Hey, Viv, good morning.
That's all right. Good morning. It's been gloomy, and pretty much the entire week will look gloomy. And I know we want sunshine, and unfortunately, we're going to lack in that department for a few days. And it's because fronts just won't have enough of a push to completely clear all of these clouds. So that means moisture's left behind too, and we'll leave a chance for some shower activity. So if your commute takes you through Broward, Miami-Dade, and the Florida Keys, most areas today have been relatively dry, but you will notice some roadways are wet, and that's because we've seen some rain. And where the rain is happening now is off the coast, so looking much better in Bay Harbor Islands and heading north into sunny Isles Beach. So dry conditions around Fisher Island and Key Biscayne at this hour, even around the Florida Keys. But on the bay side, we have the concerns for visibility. So a dense fog advisory will remain in effect until 11 o'clock this morning. But take a look at the amount of cold weather advisories that stretch from northern Florida all the way into Texas, a sliver of Texas, parts of Louisiana under a blizzard warning at this time. And there's a lot of snow brewing here that's going to spread, believe it or not, into northern sections of the state. I'll be back with a whole lot more on this coming up in a few minutes. Good morning, South Florida. We're waking up to periods of clouds, and occasionally we'll see a few showers, but I think fewer today than yesterday. Most of the rain will be north of Alligator Alley today. So if your commute takes you through Broward and Miami-Dade, looking good now. We have some gusty downpours move through the region and off the coast, and around Key Biscayne and Fisher Island, it's dried up right now. Florida Keys are dry, but you're dealing with some fog, dense marine fog, so an advisory will remain in effect for the Bayside and into the Gulf until 11 o'clock this morning. But there's a lot of winter weather alerts for parts of the Panhandle, even the Mid-Atlantic states through Texas, and even a portion of southern Louisiana and eastern Texas. That's where there is a blizzard warning. Snowstorm brewing here, so there's snow on the ground, even in Corpus Christi and Houston, stretching through Mississippi and Alabama. Late tonight into tomorrow, that's when the snow will start to enter into the Panhandle of Florida, and there's going to be a wintry mix as well in there that will probably impact Jacksonville and St. Augustine. And as far as accumulations are concerned, parts of the Panhandle, and that includes Panama City, could see anywhere between 2 to 6 inches of snow. Closer to home, no snow for South Florida, but we are definitely going to turn colder. It is 63 in Miami, 66 in Key West with the breeze out of the northeast. So we have a front that hasn't completely cleared. So it's left moisture behind, and that's why we have that chance for showers. Tomorrow, low pressure rides along the front, so it'll be cooler, windy, and wetter. As far as Thursday is concerned, we're going to have an unsettled pattern continuing, but then front clears. So that sets the stage for colder air to arrive Friday in the 50s, and then a reinforcing shot for our weekend. So Saturday looks to be the coldest. Small craft advisory in effect. One will likely be required as wind and seas go up tonight for the Florida Keys. Right now, coastal waters light to a moderate chop. And the next tide cycle, well, that is going to be high tide at 12:58 in Fort Lauderdale, 1:27 in Miami. And today we'll have gloomy skies, fewer showers, highs this time around in the 70s. By tonight, cloudy and damp. 50s around mainland South Florida, 60s for the Keys. But get ready, it's going to get much colder. 52 for a low on Friday, 46 by Saturday. Metro 7 on 7 forecast.
This
South Florida, we are going to be in for a cloudy day with temperatures climbing this time around into the 70s instead of staying stuck in the 60s. But we will have a chance of seeing a few showers around. It's not going to be as wet as it was yesterday. Tomorrow, a different story. There is a front lingering around the state, so that's why we have moisture around for shower activity. And tomorrow, trending wetter across South Florida. Gusty winds out of the north will prevail. And then as we look ahead into Thursday, low pressure and another system starts to move in, and that just means we'll remain unsettled with cool showers. It doesn't clear completely until Friday when we get a push of colder air across South Florida, and lows will dip down into the lower 50s. We have a small craft advisory in effect. Threat of rip currents, high area beaches, east-northeast winds today, 5 to 15 knots, seas building 4 to 6 feet higher in the Gulf Stream. An advisory will likely be required tonight for the Florida Keys as wind and seas increase out of the north. And next tide cycle will be high tide 127 in Miami. Highs today in the 70s with gloomy skies unfortunately holding through the next few days. But tonight, we're also going to introduce a chance for showers with temperatures in the 50s and 60s. Your extended outlook calls for sweater weather South Florida style. Friday, 52 for the low, 46 by Saturday. That's your 7 on 7 forecast. Morning, South Florida, waking up to coolish conditions, but it's also cloudy. Right now it is 64 in Miami, West Kendall, 66 in Key West to 66 in Pompano Beach. And here's a look at the winds, north-northwest, up to 6 miles per hour, humidity high. And we have some low clouds, so visibility has been less, or at least a little more restricted, especially in downtown Miami. So here's a look at the local storm tracking radar. It is drier to start off in comparison to yesterday, but there's still moisture in the air for some shower activity. And we did get a batch of heavier rain along coastal Dade. That has pushed off the coast. It's like traveling parallel to the coastline. So right now your commute is looking okay. Where we do have fog, that's around the bay side into the Gulf of Mexico. So a dense marine fog advisory will remain in place through 11 a.m. Now the big view showing a developing snowstorm, and it's been impacting Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and this will travel toward the east, so the panhandle will start to see some snow by tonight and into tomorrow. You could see the swath of snow, also a wintry mix, so some freezing rain possible around Jacksonville and St. Augustine. Models are indicating that a good 2, maybe 6 inches of snow possible for parts of the panhandle, and that includes Panama City into I-10 and Tallahassee. Our forecast calls for it to be a cool one. Front lingers, low pressure forms along it. So heading into tomorrow, it will actually be wetter than today, but it's also going to turn gustier across the region. And then as we look ahead into Thursday, we'll have unsettled weather continuing across South Florida with some cool showers, but it does look like this front will have enough of a push to clear. So our chance for rain will go down, as well as temperatures to close out the week. So typical rainy season chances for us, 10 to 20% today at 30, up to 60 tomorrow, and then it gets very dry heading into the weekend. Your boating forecast not ideal right now for our offshore waters. There's a small craft advisory in place, high risk of rip currents at area beaches. For tonight, a small craft advisory will likely be required for the Florida Keys. And the next tide cycle will be high tide 127 in Miami, 240 for Key West. Highs today in the lower 70s, so a touch warmer than yesterday for sure. And then tonight, cloudy and damp, some showers possible in the 50s and 60s, with your extended outlook calling for the lower 50s by Friday and in the 40s by Saturday morning. That's your 7 on 7 forecast. I know, and it's going to be gloomy over the next couple days, unfortunately. We won't be living up to our name, so we can definitely use the sunshine, but we'll lack in that department until everything gets enough of a push to clear. Right now it is 63 in Fort Lauderdale, 66 in Marathon to 7 degrees in Key West. And then we move up into the central Florida, and that's where we're finding the 40s, but 30s in the Panhandle, 35 in Tallahassee, 31 in Pensacola, and it is certainly freezing, and snow is headed in that general direction. As far as your morning commute is concerned, right now it's actually looking pretty good. Mostly dry weather underway. We did see a few showers this morning. Nothing as widespread like we did yesterday, but the bulk of the rain remains off the coast, and it looks like it's going to stay in that general area. But for the Bayside and into the Gulf of Mexico, that's where there's a dense marine fog advisory through 11 a.m. Our in-house model run showing gloomy skies, drizzles possible, but the bulk of the rain stays to the north of the area, but there's still the possibility of seeing some small showers popping up through tonight. Temperature-wise, will actually warm up into the 70s this time around. Your full forecast coming up in a few minutes. It's a very rare winter storm, so there's so many winter weather advisories, and even a portion of Louisiana, a little sliver of eastern Texas under a blizzard warning. So incredible that, yes, it's extremely cold and that conditions are just right for snow to happen. And here in South Florida, no snow in the forecast anytime soon. We've started off on the coolish side, but unfortunately our pattern looks pretty gloomy through most of the week until everything decides to clear. And right now it is 64 in Miami, 66 in Pompano to 67 in Key West. The wind north-northwest 6 to 7 miles per hour, and humidity high, letting us know that there's moisture in the air. But we have seen less rain this morning than yesterday at this time. Most of the showers are off the coast at this hour, but around sections of Fort Lauderdale, clipping 595, we have a tiny little shower there. Heading into the Florida Keys, visibility has been an issue here, so boaters stay away from the waters right now. Bayside into the Gulf, there's a dense marine fog advisory through 11 a.m. But I want to show you that snowstorm that we've been talking about. Even Corpus Christi getting some snow, and there is snow on the ground in Houston. And take a look at Louisiana, a good swath of snow there, especially around southern portions. But now it is spreading into Alabama, and the Sunshine State's going to get into the action later today. So here's the future snow forecast, just to show you that northern Florida will be getting some snow, wintry weather, nice sea mix into Jacksonville, heavier rain to the south, and then it clears throughout the day on Wednesday, but a good 6 inches of snow possible, and that includes Tallahassee and Panama City. Our forecast here calls for a front to hover nearby. That's why it's cloudy and it'll be wet at times. It'll get even wetter tomorrow until it gets enough of a push to clear, and that means colder air will be on the way, and we'll feel it sometime on Friday and into the weekend when we will be sporting around the extra layers. So the rain chance is at 30% today, 60% tomorrow, and then it goes down to close out the week. We have a small craft advisory in effect. One will likely be required tonight for the Florida Keys as wind and seas go up, and then we're going to get a high tide cycle at 127 in Miami. Highs today warmer than yesterday into the lower 70s, and then by tonight 50s and 60s. It'll be cloudy and damp, but wetter for sure tomorrow. And then a front gets enough of a push to clear, and that means low 50s to start off on Friday. And that's your 7 on 7 forecast. Good morning, South Florida. We're keeping cool and then turning much colder. So temperatures will be in the upper 50s to about 60 degrees at least through Thursday. And then they dive into the low 50s come Friday, then 40s for Saturday. So certainly turning much colder soon. And your boating forecast has a small craft advisory in effect for offshore waters, threat of rip currents, high area beaches, and seas building 4 to 6 feet. And for the Florida Keys, there's a small craft advisory that may be required tonight as wind and seas increase. But right now, seas inside the reef 1 to 4 feet, 2 to 6 foot seas beyond the reef. Next tide cycle will be high tide in the noon hour in Fort Lauderdale, 240 for Key West. Highs today Low to mid 70s, so we're actually going to warm up more than yesterday. It'll stay gloomy looking with some shower activity tonight, but more on the increase starting tomorrow. And that is your 7 on 7 forecast. Morning, South Florida. We're waking up to mostly cloudy skies, but we're finally starting to see some breaks here and there. So some sun will peek through, which will actually help temperatures this time around basically climb into the 70s, because yesterday we were stuck in the 60s pretty much all day long. Something different today. It's not as wet as it was yesterday to start things off. Most areas are dry right now, but we have seen some showers. We actually have these tiny little ones that have flared up right around Plantation, 595 and Davie. And then there's another one right around Broward Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. So here's a look at the Florida Keys. There's still the concern for poor visibility. So for the Bayside into the nearshore Gulf waters, that's where there's a dense marine fog advisory that will run through 11 a.m. But here's this significant rare snowstorm pushing through the Gulf Coast states, and eventually parts of the Panhandle will get into the action, where about 2 to 6 inches of snow possible, but a wintry mix likely to stretch into Jacksonville by tomorrow morning, and then it'll all clear out. But yes, a good amount of snow possible around these areas. We are waking up into the 60s all around with an east to northeast wind, and our forecast calls for a front to pretty much provide for wetter conditions tomorrow, and then it clears out gradually on Thursday, allowing colder air to settle in and hopefully more sunshine. But heading into the weekend, we're going to have a reinforcing shot of colder air, so that will set the stage for potentially the widespread 40s come Saturday morning. Small craft advisory in effect, high risk of rip currents at area beaches. Small craft advisory will likely get issued tonight for the Florida Keys. Next tide cycle 12:58, high tide in Fort Lauderdale. Highs today in the low to mid 70s. Tonight we're going to have cloudy and damp conditions, 50s and 60s for lows, with your extended outlook calling for colder air to arrive as we close out the week. And that's your 7 on 7 forecast.